While I am certainly thankful for the attention the resolution will bring to this reprehensible atrocity, much of the language leads me to suspect that there may be other motives for offering it. In my testimony today, I will express my disappointment that this somber occasion is being diluted by those who seek to further inflame racial divisions and foment animosity toward law enforcement. But first, let me focus on the event House Resolution 398 purports to commemorate. What is known today as the Tulsa Race Massacre occurred 100 years ago, and America should know of the brutality and atrocity of that day. History, however uncomfortable, should not be censored, nor in today's terms canceled. History should be taught without political bias and without the intent to make any one group, gender, or ethnicity feel responsible for the sins of their ancestors. I don't speak of American history as someone who is unfamiliar with our country's many struggles. Both of my parents were history teachers, and they grew up in a segregated America, a segregated Oklahoma. My father is a veteran and a retired history teacher. They both had their share of racial discrimination, but rose above it and both became college graduates. I learned not just from textbooks in schools, but from my parents, their desire to educate me on a subject that they deeply loved, Black history. In fact, it was my mother who first taught me about the Tulsa Race Riot, which is what it was called then. The event as described by my mother didn't sound like much of a riot to me, at least not on the part of the Black community living in the Greenwood district. It sounded more like an invasion. Yet she told me about the atrocities that this subcommittee knows well, the looting and burning, the lynching and killing, the utter destruction of an entire community that left hundreds dead and thousands homeless. She also taught me about the unparalleled prosperity of the Greenwood district. And I can't describe to you how inspired I was by her stories of countless Black-owned businesses, all thriving in their segregated economic bubble as a result and a symbol of modern capitalism. My mother, who grew up an hour away from Greenwood in Muskogee, another town with a thriving Black middle class during that time, also celebrated the entrepreneurship that was a byproduct of the strong families of Greenwood. She took great pride in teaching me how the fruits of capitalism took root and blossomed so enormously that the community was termed Black Wall Street. The fact that the Black community in Greenwood was so successful really made the destruction all the more painful for me to imagine. All that prosperity, not even a full generation removed from slavery, completely wiped out. Hundreds of families mourning the death of someone they loved. Thousands grieving a lost home or destroyed storefront. Many suffered all of those things all at once. This is the tragedy that should be our focus. Instead, I'm concerned the resolution that was adopted by the majority promises to stoke racial tensions by equating white supremacy with police brutality. It accuses law enforcement of a pattern of violence against Black people in the United States and state-sanctioned violence. This language, frankly, lands like a slap in the face to our honorable law enforcement officers and all who support them. As an American who appreciates the sacrifice and service of police officers across this country, I reject the false and divisive rhetoric found in parts of this resolution. Mr. Chairman and members, House Resolution 398 may mark the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre, but it does not honor the victims of that tragic day by seeking to further inflame racial divisions. The memory of those who suffered is not honored by generating animosity toward police officers. The families who grieve loved ones who lost livelihoods, those families are not honored by divisive rhetoric calculated to appease the opponents of law and order. Instead, we honor those who suffered and died and families they left behind by simply telling the truth about what happened. We honor them by educating America about the tragic day. But above all, we can honor them by giving their descendants a land of freedom and opportunity. I can think of no greater way to honor the legacy of Black Wall Street than to foster a new generation of Black entrepreneurs and business owners, generating wealth and jobs that lift whole communities out of poverty. But if the legacy of Greenwood teaches us anything, it is that if we want strong communities and a strong nation, it first begins with strong families. Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Johnson, and distinguished members, I thank you once again for the opportunity to be here today and offer my testimony on this important topic.
Thank you, Mr. Shannon. As the former speaker, you recognize that time is of importance.